Hi, and welcome back to Grief Inspired. My name is Catherine McNulty, and I have a very special guest with me today. Kecia Smith is here, and she has agreed to share some of her story and also some of her insights in what it's like to lose a spouse, have a spouse that's been sick, be a caregiver for a spouse, and then work her way through to a place that is more whole, more complete now, and giving you a sense of the ability to move forward and to be hopeful. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I love that. Yeah, you definitely took what was in my heart and head and you gave it words. So it sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, and one of the things we were just talking about before we started recording here too is, you've done this in, I think you said 235 days, right? You've gotten to a place where, not to say that your grief is over, because it certainly isn't, right? But you've done a lot of healing in these 235 days. And I think that, I just want to compare and contrast that to a lot of people that I talk to who can be stuck deep in grief after loss of a spouse for years and years. So, congratulations to you on the work that you've done, because it has been work for you.
Well, one of the things that somebody asked me the other day, and they were like, I don't understand. I don't understand how you got here in such a short amount of time. And one, it's definitely, I have an amazing tribe of people. One has been through deciding to go to grief counseling. And then I told them this: when you are living your worst fear, you have nothing else left to fear,
Yes.
because I am living the absolute, my worst fear. And that is losing my person of 35 years. And so I have nothing left to fear. So it's easier to move forward knowing that I'm already living the absolute worst.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think there's a strength that develops in that, right?
Yes.
And and
Yes.
and that's very evident in you and how you show up and how you talk about it. So start by telling us, how did you find me? What made you come to YouTube and look for me? Share some of that story with us.
That is so funny because I am a ordained minister and I'm a certified Christian counselor. And I thought I had all the answers for myself because I've done this. And then I came home one night and I have been sober for 28 years. And I came home one night and I was done. I was done. They had just repossessed my husband and I's RV that we had spent many months and months in. I was fighting to keep the house. He wasn't here. And I pulled in the driveway and I said, I cannot do this anymore. I don't want to do it. And I thought, you know what? I know exactly where the pain pills are. I'll go down. I'll get a fifth of whiskey because whiskey was my thing. And I will just go to sleep. Two things happened. I came inside and my chihuahua had to go outside. So I took her outside first. And then I got to thinking, oh my gosh, my children just buried their father. And one of them is going to find me. And I sat and marinated in that moment and was just like, even though it would be the easy way out, what would I do to my children?
Mm.
And I I decided that I just put my keys away and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do anything. And I went and laid in bed and I was on YouTube and I literally just put in, this was so funny, I just put in how to deal with grief. And there was a couple different videos that came up. And then um, I found one of your videos. Well, I'm a journaler. I love writing things down. I've always had a diary. I've always been that person. And it was a journal that actually was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. And down the rabbit hole. And I think that night I laid in my bed and probably watched 6 or 7 of your videos.
Mm.
And I was just like, okay, God, like, I hear you and you hear me. But more important than that, I knew that I was seen because I knew that somebody out there had already been where I'm at. And they were willing to take my hand and say, you know what, I don't have it all figured out, but I'm willing to share what I have figured out.
Mhm.
And I think it was that very next day, like I commented on like all the videos, and then like I started getting email pings that you had like commented back, and then we like started emailing. And then the night that we called and did the intake on the phone, there was just such a kinder connection. I was like, okay, God, I know that this is what I need to do.
Mhm.
And so, like YouTube, you can find anything on YouTube.
Well, exactly. I go to YouTube for everything. I mean, and that was exactly, that's what made me create this YouTube channel was I was in a very similar situation to yours. I was like, I want to believe that there's something else. I want to believe that there is hope, that this is something I can figure out. And I went to YouTube. But for me, it was 13 years ago and YouTube didn't have a lot of content. And so I couldn't find what I was looking for. And it's what ended, it's what made me decide to create this,
So
the
glad, so
content that I
glad you did.
started. And I'm so glad that I did too. And how long ago was that?
Well, we started our journey in October. So
Mhm.
it was probably, he passed August 1st, and this was the end of August, beginning of September.
Okay, of
And
23.
yeah, 20, yeah,
Okay.
23.
Okay.
And when you've been sober for 28 years and you don't think about it and it doesn't bother you, but then you're going through something. And
Mhm.
that's the first thing that you think of is that, okay, well, you know what? Why not? Jack's always been good to me. Why not go pick up a fifth and just finish it? And so and then I decided in that moment that I was worth it. Like I don't think I don't think this is how my husband would
Mm.
want me to live my life. I don't think my husband would wanted me to end my life.
Mhm.
And then I have 3 adult children that I adore, and I'm watching them suffer. And I thought, you know what? I need to be healed
Mhm.
because I don't know what it's like to lose a parent. I'm blessed. Both of my parents are still alive.
Mm.
And so I had to be able to know how to meet them where they were. And
Mhm.
I couldn't go around just half crazy, half baked, I had to find a way to fight for myself
Mhm.
because life is precious. And I had to find a way to just do it. And it was just a combination of the words that you spoke, knowing that you have been through your own grief. Your raw and transparency really spoke to my heart.
Mm.
Um, and I was just like, you know what? I need to do this. And it was one of
Mhm.
the decisions I ever made because have I thought about, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this anymore? Yes, I have. But I have not gotten to that place where, I didn't buy the liquor. I didn't take the pills. I show up every day for myself in a manner that's comfortable for me. And that looks different every day.
And I love your transparency with all of this because these are the things that people don't talk about,
Exactly.
right? That the reality is when you lose a spouse, or in my case, you lose a child, or you lose a parent, anyone who's close to you and means a lot to you, there's always that moment.
Yeah.
There's that moment where you have to decide, like, am I going to potentially end it? What am I going to do? For me, it was like, well, what if I just turn this car really fast off of this bridge, right? Like, so I think it's normal for us to start thinking of that. It's not normal to, act on it. But I think that those are things that people don't talk about. And I love that you said, you thought about Joey and said, what would he want for me? So that's such a way to honor him. You thought about your kids, right? And said, like, what do I need to do? Which is, the ultimate, parental love,
That
right?
mom,
Is thinking about them, before yourself, because that's what we do as parents. But then also you chose you. Like you also said, but I deserve this too. And I think that we all can struggle with that, right? Is realizing like, wait a minute, I am worth it. So I love that, I love that you went to all of those places because it is such an important story. So tell us about Joey.
Oh my gosh. The love of my life. um, I met him when I was 18 and we got married at 19 and he was in the Air Force. We became parents to our beautiful oldest baby girl when we were 21. Um, I met him, I was nannying at his aunt's house, and she didn't tell me that her nephew was coming up for a visit because he was on leave. And he was in the bathroom when I guess he came in and I was putting the girls down for a nap. And I went to go to the bathroom, and as I was getting ready to open the bathroom door, he comes out of the bathroom door, and I'm like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "Oh, my name's Joey." And I'm like, "Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Kecia." He said, "Shot who?" And I'm like, "You're a moron." Like, because he couldn't say my name, and I'm like, "You're a moron." And we stayed up that whole night talking. We just talked about everything, talked about past relationships, talked about things that we had done, just talked. And back then there wasn't cell phones and there wasn't internet. So we wrote letters, and he had to stand in line at the barracks, and we had to he had to call me on the payphone. And it was a whirlwind. We raised our kids. He was amazing. We've had some health issues. We went, down the road, up the road. It wasn't perfect, but it was perfect for us. It was two imperfect people who found a perfect way to love one another, which sounds cheesy, but it was so true. And in 2016, I retired and we bought a Winnebago and we set off to find America. We've been to every state but Alaska and Hawaii. We've slept under the stars in Washington State, and we have climbed mountains, and we did all the things. And truly, I'm so glad looking back now and knowing how it ended, that he died when he was 53. I'm so glad that we just threw caution to the wind and we just did all the crazy things that everybody told us not to do.
Ah, good for you. Yeah, I mean, it sounds a little fairy tale-ish, right? I mean, and I've always thought that when I've heard your stories, I'm like, I love this. It's like a novel, right? But your relationship was always very close and full of
It,
excitement and adventure. And, it is the perfect novel.
it definitely is. And, and even just like the different traditions that we, did through the years. And so it definitely was. So not only did I lose my husband of 34 years, and we had been together 35, but I lost my best friend.
Mhm.
I lost a part of me. And I hate to say that he completed me, because that's like, I am a complete being in who I am. But I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that God created him for me and me for him. I
Mhm.
know.
And so when was it that he got sick?
In 2019, he had a melanoma spot on his arm, and we went through 7 arm surgeries, and they thought they got it all. In May of 2022, we bought our home that I'm actually living in now. We loved our home. We were here exactly 30 days, and he had a 3-day migraine that just wouldn't go away. And I got home from work one night, and me and him and my daughter went to the hospital because he was having trouble seeing. And they found the brain tumor. So he was diagnosed with brain cancer in June 18th, Father's Day weekend of 2022.
Okay.
And he had one of the rarest forms. And because he had one of the rarest forms, but in March, we were in maintenance mode. They were shrinking. It was good. We went on a trip to Tennessee to celebrate, got a cabin in the woods, just the two of us. And about 30 days after that, he started having trouble walking. He started having trouble remembering that he ate breakfast, that got dressed, and they found another tumor in his frontal lobe,
Mhm.
and then in his spine. And so the last 8 weeks, 9 weeks of his life, he could not walk. And in the end, I was the only person he remembered.
Hmm. And you spent a lot of time taking care of him.
Yes, I did. I missed a lot of work. Everything was about what I had to do to give him the best day possible each day. And then from July 15th until August 1st, he was at Hershey Memorial Hospital.
Mhm.
And they were amazing. He was on the cancer floor, and we had a little ensuite. So I had a bed there, had my own bathroom, and we were throwing everything at it. And I thought he was coming home. I did not think that
Mm.
we were going to get. I didn't think that that was going to be the end, but I'm glad that I chose to stay there with him. I only went home 3 nights, and I was only gone for a couple hours because I just wanted to get back. And I don't know, now hindsight, I think my soul knew. I think my soul knew
Probably.
it was dying.
Yeah. I mean, were the doctors optimistic as well, or were they kind of telling you not so much, but you didn't want to kind of believe it?
They were very optimistic because Joey had beat it already. He had already beat it. And so they were rooting. They were rooting like he was the hometown. And the day that they told me that he only had 24 hours left, his lead oncologist just wrapped me in his arms and
Mm.
crying, and he was crying, and he's like, he's too good for this bleepity world anyhow.
Right.
And and he said, you got 24 hours, less than 24 hours. And they were just amazing. They brought cots and blankets and food and everything. And
Mm.
he didn't say no to anybody. And there was times that we had like 40, 50, 40 some people in the hospital room. And
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow. So you got to be with him through the end then too.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was the last one to hear his heartbeat.
Mm. Which is, heart-wrenching, but at the same time, you and I both know what a gift that is.
Yeah, when she looked at me and she told everybody in the room to be quiet, and she's like, you only have a couple minutes. She said, when I go like this, I want everybody quiet. And she said, Kecia, just put the stethoscope right here. And I was watching her, and I'm like watching him. And by this time, we had been holding hands for probably 10 hours, and he had
Mm.
let my hand slip. And so I knew we were really close. And so she put up her finger,
Mhm.
stethoscope in, and it was,
Wow.
and in that moment, he left me and he went to be with Jesus.
Mhm. It's interesting that you say that because when I interviewed another person, Greg, on another video, he said something similar because he lost his wife. And he said, I was holding my wife's hand. And he said, I held onto her hand and she was with me. And it was like she was reaching out to God's hand and grabbed his hand. And so I thought that was just such nice imagery. And it's essentially the same thing
Yeah,
that you just
definitely.
did. So no, I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. And that was 235 days ago.
Yes.
Yes. So that 235 days, you have been through a whirlwind,
Yes. Yes.
like all of it. You've experienced all of it.
I said anger is the worst. That's the worst one I got through, but yeah.
That was the worst one for you. Why so?
I don't know. I think it's because when you tried to tell me that it was a secondary emotion. No, it isn't.
Yeah,
No, it isn't.
it doesn't have to be, right? And so what was it that where did your anger go to? Like what were you most angry at?
I was most angry that for first little while, I was angry at God. And my
Mhm.
first was, we beat this once. So it's almost like it's almost like when you think about it, you have a punch card. Okay. So we had already punch carded brain cancer. It was gone,
Right.
but
And
then
it
it was.
seems like almost like a cruel joke a little bit, huh?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And because it had gotten into the spinal fluid, it was just dropping cells wherever it wanted to.
Mm.
And I was just like, seriously, like, or my punch card.
Hmm.
It's we beat it. We beat two tumors. And so that was my anger. Um, Also my anger was that I was 53 and this wasn't how it was supposed to end.
Right.
You say until death do you part, but you really never think you're going to get there.
Right. Or if you do, it's going to happen at exactly the same time.
Yeah, like we're gonna die in our RV
Right.
together.
Yes. Well, and that's what, that's the fairy tale. Everybody says, we're going to grow old and we're going to sit on the porch and then one day it's just, in our rocking chairs and then one day it's just all going to be over. And
One day it's just ripped out from underneath of you, and you look in the mirror and you're like, "How is this my life?"
the reality is that men typically on average die much sooner than women do. So there's a lot of women that are sort of left behind. And I honestly believe it's because we as women are stronger. But I don't know if that's the case or not.
But you know what? I kind of believe that because I know my son, and he's 26. He's the baby, and he has said this so many times. He said, "Mom," because I've said, and I've said this 1,000 times. I would have traded places with him in a heartbeat.
Hmm.
I would have gladly, if that's how death worked, I would
Hmm.
take place so that he could be here.
Right.
And my son has said to me so many times, he's like, "Mom, Dad wouldn't have lasted. Dad doesn't have your strength." He
Mm.
said, "Strong." And Dad was smart and Dad was all the things, but Dad does not have your inner strength.
Mm.
He said Dad would have been gone probably 30, 60 days after you died.
And what a gift that is, and very insightful from your son, right?
Yeah.
To be able to verbalize that to you. And yeah, that's nice.
No, and it was definitely a gift because I looked at him like, "You're full of it." He's like, "No, Mom." He said, "We've all talked about it." And he said, because it's just, he said, even though, Dad was the head of this house, you were the neck that turned the head.
And you said you've always had sort of a lot of support around you, which has been really helpful. What
Yeah.
was most helpful about that? Was it just their physical presence? Was it because they kind of understood because maybe of what they've been through? What was it that really, provided you with support, from your family and your friends that were around?
Well, I'm going to tell you, it was definitely support from my friends. Um, a little nugget of my information is that I lost my brother, my sister, and my husband in less than 5 years.
Wow. Mhm.
So three of the key people in my life who are my besties, who were my ride or dies, I lost them in less than 5 years of each
Right.
other.
Hmm.
So my family was grieving in its own. My parents, they tried and they have tried, but that's just been too much. But my friends just showing up has been very like I show up and they don't expect anything of me.
Mm.
Um, I love that we still talk about Joey. I love that they're in my corner as I go forward. You know, encouraging me that my life isn't over.
Mhm.
Um, Speaking life into me. One of the things that have been so helpful is just sitting on the couch, eating ice cream with two of my precious friends from the barn and just not even having an agenda, but just eating ice cream and talking about all the stupid things we've seen on social media. Nothing, so, all those things. Going to dinner with friends and they don't care that if I start to bawl,
Right.
that they just hold space for me.
Mm. And what a
Um,
gift that is, because a lot of people don't have that, right? And there's a lot of people who, show up and watch these videos too, because they're like, hey, I have somebody else that lost somebody, and I don't know what to do. And I think what you're saying is just show up, right?
Yeah,
And just be present. And yeah, and I love that you said, they didn't expect a lot out of me. So I could just be however I was. And that's very powerful. And what a blessing, because a lot of people don't even have the one person in their life to do that for them, unfortunately.
I know. And one of the things that I've always said to them, because I have a core group, I'm not asking you to fix me. I'm not asking for you for advice. I'm just asking you just to listen.
Right.
People
Mhm.
don't, and and I did get through a time too where we would get together and I was the only widow, which I hate that word, but I was the only widow. And so then people would just like, it was kid. And I talked to you about this in one of our sessions.
Uh-huh.
They kept handling me with kid gloves.
Yes.
And I'm
People
just
hate that. Yes.
I might be fragile, but I'm fragile like a bomb.
Right.
I'm
Yes.
fragile like a vase. I'm not going to shatter.
Yes. And one thing I have to say, I have to interject at this point, because you said, I hate the word widow, right? And
Yeah.
the instant thought that came into my head was like, well, at least you have a word, because as a mother who lost a child, I don't even have a word,
Oh, that's hard. Oh my gosh. And see, that's hard.
right? Like there isn't even, you're a widower, or you're a widower, or you could say you're an orphan if you've lost a parent. There isn't a word, and I don't know why.
That's what you need to do. You need to come up with a word.
Okay, we're going to work on that. We're going to work on that. Yes. So you mentioned before that, the grief course was really helpful, and you had said that the first meeting was really impactful to you, because you got to be in the presence of other people and hear their story. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I was very nervous at first. I am by trade very introverted. And so like I'm rocking the Zoom world right now, loving it. Because you can be apart and not be apart, still be in the comfort of your home. But yeah, showing up that first night, I was very nervous. But one of the things I was so grateful for is that when you talk to us before the meetings, before we start, you kind of get a feel for, okay, this person I'm gonna have to prompt a little bit more. This person is probably not gonna say a lot. And so you were very good about that. But then when we got there and like we're on the screen, I was so excited and nervous. But what had happened was, and I still talk about this, is that another couple were there and they started talking about their grief journey and sharing who they lost. And I immediately start scrutinizing my own grief and being like, what do I have? They've their loss was so much greater than mine.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I even here?
Mm-hmm.
And that hit me hard because I was shrinking back, even though I had lost the love of my life, but they lost something that in my mind I can't even fathom what they went through.
Right. And it's okay to share. So the couple that was in the group, they had lost a son to suicide. And it was intense.
They had lost their son, and it was, and I'm automatically shrinking back thinking that my grief is not as important as theirs, that my loss is not as great as theirs. And this is playing around in my mind. And I'm like, I'm tapping out. I'm done. Like, I'm not going to come back. And then I don't even remember what you said, but you said something. And the wife is my Colorado bestie now. We're like the best of friends. And she says right before I'm getting ready to talk, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine what you're going through. If I ever lost my spouse, I couldn't even function. And I'm like, she does think my grief is important.
Right. Because her spouse was in the course with us too.
Yes.
And
Do I love
yeah,
them both? But I'm
and
like, yes.
it's very powerful, because I think it's useful, because people are like, well, don't compare your grief, right? And it's not about comparing grief.
Yeah.
What it's about is hearing and seeing someone else's position. And you, as a mother of three, yes?
Yeah. Three.
As a mother of three, to lose one of your children, you could put yourself in those shoes and say, oh my gosh, how terrible right? And then she was able to reciprocate and say the same thing about your loss of a spouse. And so I think it's useful to be in the group. You know, sometimes people will say, well, the group should only be everybody that's a widow.
No.
And
Mm.
I don't operate that way because I think it's useful to hear other people's experience, because I think it normalizes some of what we're going through, because when we all lose someone, when I lost my baby, like I thought I was the only person in the world that this had ever happened to, because that's how it feels. And then to hear from other people and to hear their stories, it really it just helps bring us all together, I think.
It definitely does. And one of the things, and one of the things is, and going through the group, like I said, she's one of my, we talk every day. She is definitely one of my like top 10 like people.
Which makes my
And
heart so
I,
happy
and the thing
to hear
is that, you know, what started out is we were trauma bonded, but
Mm,
now we are healing. Our bonding has surpassed being trauma bonded.
love that.
Now we are both on our healing journeys. And so we're healing journey together. We're side by side in that. And I have good days and she has not so good days and I have not so good days. And she's quick witted and quick tongued and she knows how to flip it around really quick. And so we're a good balance for each other. And if anybody would have told me that I would have came out of grief group
Mhm.
with a Colorado bestie that I literally talk to every day, I would be like, no way. That's just
Right.
like stupid.
Mhm.
But it works. And it works because it's a safe space and you can be vulnerable and you can be strong and you can be weak and you can be opinionated.
Mhm.
Um, you can do all the verbal diarrhea and the way that you bring it back around, it's just like, okay, yeah, I do feel this way, but I don't have to feel this way. There's
Mhm.
another option.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, yeah, I definitely, and I know you have shared with many of us different friendships and relationships that have come out of the course. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm all
Mhm.
for it.
One thing that I didn't anticipate when I started the courses that, I tell people now it's this magic that's created.
It
It
is.
really is, because it's somewhat synergistic. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. I
Yes,
think that's
yes,
the
yes.
and I think that's just so I love hearing that you guys still communicate.
Well, because they've seen you at your worst.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
have seen you at your absolute worst.
And they're okay with it, right? And we
That's
really,
right.
I mean, I work hard to create a space that's very forgiving and very safe and non-judgmental, because that's what I wanted. That's what I needed.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
also somewhat challenging, right? I will call you guys out on your stuff, and
Yeah.
I can tell when there's something that you don't want to look at, right? And
Definitely.
and that's my job sometimes, to hold up the mirror a little bit, but yeah.
Yes.
I congratulated you at the beginning too, is because it really is, that's why I say grief is a process, and it takes work and it requires bravery, and courage, courage,
Yeah.
just to, like you said, just to show up on that first day. You were like, I don't know. Right. But you did. You had courage to sign up and choose yourself, and you had courage to show up, and then to keep coming back. Right. And you were somebody who really participated full out, right? The homework that I gave, you always did, and you had it prepared. And there was an email where you told me that you did it, and I had all your answers. And, and that was work that, you put into it. And, the more you put in, the more
That's right.
you get out. And I think you're a testament to that.
Thank you. And I'm looking forward to going through it again. Like that is definitely one of the things that once I get through training my horse, that's my thing. Because I want to meet more people, but I want to give back. I want to be able to come back into class and still glean and still learn, but also to pay it forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that I have said to you, and I've shared this with you, is that when this first started, I was drowning. I was drowning. And then I started to tread water,
Mm-hmm.
and that gets tiring. It's easier just to drown because eventually it just consumes you and you just stop breathing. So
Right.
it's easier. Treading water is tiring. you got to put in the work, you got to do the homework, you got to do the things, you got to talk it out. And then I hit that point and I was like, oh my goodness, I do have hope. And that became my flotation device. And that's where I'm at right now. If there's a place where I'm at, I'm floating on my hope, and it is my flotation device. But like you reminded me in one of our last sessions, is that soon I'm going to be swimming. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be swimming on my own, and I'm going to keep swimming, and I'm going to keep swimming, and I'm going to keep swimming.
Mm-hmm. And all of that, right? Using that analogy, you're swimming and you're using what you've learned from me and from your own experience as your flotation device, right? Because, I want you to think of like, maybe you're on a boogie board right now, right? Where you're paddling, but I want to be that flotation device for you, right?
Yes.
And pretty soon when you start swimming in a really big way, right? That's where grief inspired comes from.
Yes.
That's where that term, that's why I chose the term, right? That you become inspired by your grief to say, wait a minute, this happened. Yes, I can learn from it. I can use it. And there is more to come. And then you can choose where that is. You can choose which direction you swim. And I'm so excited to see where you swim.
I know. I can't wait. I do. I feel it. I feel it every day when I get up and choose to show up for myself. And some days I show up a little differently. Mm-hmm. Some days I have to force myself. Some days I promise myself Starbucks if I show up for myself. And some days I'm all ready just to do it. But,
And you will, you're like, it's amazing. Yeah. I'm so proud. You've done a lot of work.
Thank you.
And there's one thing I wanted to talk about too, because you had mentioned, so my grief journal, this is my shameless plug for the grief journal. This, we suggest you if you can't get into the course, you start with the journal, because it's going to help move you forward, and then, jump into the course when you're ready. But on page 72,
yes,
we actually incorporated page 72 into the course that you were in, because you said, I just have to talk about this because I love this one. And the question that was in it, so there's writing prompts to help get you started. And it said, if I could spend one day with my loved one, I would.
I would. I love that.
Why did you like that one so much?
Well, and it's funny because all of us had different perspectives on that. If you remember that night, I kind of took it as, if I had one night knowing that it was my last night with him. Mm-hmm. And other people in the group interpreted it totally different, which is a beautiful thing about journaling prompts, because not only did I share what I thought, but then them sharing how they read it, I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Mm-hmm. And I think like the gist of what I had said is that I would do absolutely nothing. Like, we would go outside and we would hold hands and we would watch the sunrise and we would watch the sunset and we would talk about everything and then nothing at all. And it would just be that moment of, here we are right now, living, pausing in that moment, and nothing else matters. Mm-hmm. Because we get so focused on everything else going on around us, mm-hmm. that we forget to practice the pause. We forget to just soak in the moment that we have, because we're anticipating what the next moment needs from us, that we forget to stay in that moment. And that's what I love about the journaling prompts, because the journaling prompts bring me back to that moment. Mm-hmm. And it almost allows you to dream again. It almost allows you, again, like you said, it allows you to hope again. Mm-hmm. It allows you to feel that love again. And that prompt has been one of my favorites. And I have asked myself it time and time again since in the 235 days since he's passed. And I always come back to, it would be him and I. We would be holding hands. We would be in comfortable silence and talking about everything. Mm-hmm. And just being in the moment. And and it's just, that's what's so, because they tell you all the time, mm-hmm. that it truly is the little things. But it truly is. At the end of my husband's life, it truly was the little things. Yeah. It was sitting on his bed, holding his hand for hours. And it was kissing the top of his head. It was the silly jokes that he would make that had nothing to do with anything. but the way the brain cancer was working, and we would just laugh about it. And I still find strength in those moments.
Mm-hmm.
Those moments are like fuel.
Yeah, and there's such a lesson there too, right? Because as we learn these lessons through our grief, right? When you talk about the little moments, right? The little moments that you cherish or the little moments that you would love to capture again, we can carry that forward and say, like, what are those moments now with your children, right? Or with your friends? And there's such a knowing and an awareness that, that I particularly have, and I'm struck with a lot, like with my son, because his older brother died. And I look at him and I'm like, I just want to snapshot this
Yeah.
moment in my brain and remember it, because it's those little things, but it's those little ones that are so very powerful.
They are very powerful. Yeah, I had an incident the other night, and it was just something so silly as somebody opening up their sandwich because I love pickles and was like, "You can have my pickle." And I'm like, "Okay." And I hadn't thought about something like that in many, many, many years. And I was just
Right.
like, "Oh, you remembered I liked pickles, and I get to take the pickle off your chicken sandwich because I like pickles." And
That's
it was
awesome.
and that is right here. It's ingrained. It's just because we all want to know that we matter to somebody. We all want to know that we're making an impact.
Mhm.
And you're right. It is truly those little things, and you don't have to show up in grandiose ways.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
I one of my best friends, seriously, she'll text me in the morning and she'll just say something as simple as, "I'm thinking about you. Have a good day."
Mhm.
Just something, just something that simple. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, she woke up and she thought about me. And
Mhm.
instead of letting the day go on, she stopped what she was doing to let me know that I was in her thoughts in that moment. And that's a beautiful, and that costs you nothing.
Right.
And that's what we treasure.
And it's interesting that you bring that up, because one of the things that I have learned in that too is that when I'm having a particularly horrible day, because none of us have great days all the time, right? And our lives go up and down, is that one of the things I remember when I'm in that space is the way to dissipate it is to send those kind of messages to other people. And so whenever I'm at and it's a text message, so it doesn't come out via voice, right? At all. So it's a text message, right? And even though you're scrappy on the back end, maybe, right? You can
Yeah.
still tell them, like, hey, I just want to let you know I'm thinking about you, or
Yeah.
sending you some love, or I saw what you posted on social media and I'm super proud of you. Or I know today's a big day for you. I just want to let you know that I'm in your corner. Those kind of things, if you take it off of yourself sometimes,
Yeah.
it's very powerful. So before we go, I want you, what do if you're talking, think of someone who is earlier in the grief process, who has also lost a spouse or someone that they care deeply about. What would you want them to know where you are now? What would you tell them, and what would you want them to?
That it hurts right now. It hurts really bad. And you're going to feel like it's going to hurt like that for a long time. But if you get up every day and you choose yourself and you hold on to the memories, the good memories, the not so good memories, each day it gets a little easier. And one of the things that I have done, and I have shared this with several people, is I have a calendar in my office. And it's a Clydesdale calendar that has its own meaning because I had to buy my own this year after 30 some years of my husband buying mine for me. And every day I get up and I pick up the pen and I walk into my office. And I remember day one. I don't even know if you could read that it said day one.
Mm.
My hand was shaking, the snot was running. And then it was day two. And then it was day 150. And then it was day 200. And then it was day 235, which was today. And there's such a powerful thing in getting up. And I do it as soon as I get up, even before I go use the restroom.
I walk into my office and I pick up that pen. I think it's day 2. It's day 3. It's day 4. And I gather strength. I gather strength for my journey. And just picking up a stinking blue Bic pen and writing it on a Clydesdale calendar.
I love that so much. And I didn't know, to be honest, right? And to be honest, I was always like, how does she always know? Like, you've always said like the exact number of days. And I'm like, what is it about this lady that she like always knows the exact number of days? Like, is she really counting? And has she really counted? You know, because I think I would lose track and I would be like, I don't know what date is. But that's so powerful because yeah, like it was like I made it another day.
Yeah.
I made it another day. And I love that. And I think that everyone should start doing that.
Well, there you go. There you go. Add it in.
You know, and I don't know. Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah. It's literally the first thing I do. Walk straight over to my office and pick up the pen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and congratulate yourself for making it through another day and reminding yourself that you're keeping going, right?
Yeah.
That, like this is because you said you do it in the morning.
Yes, first thing.
To sort of say, not at the end of the day, to say like,
Nope.
I made it through the day. You do it in the morning to say, I'm starting another day and I've got the whole day ahead of me. And what am I
And
going
to the reason that I do it in the morning, and it's just because one of my favorite scriptures is it's darkest just before the dawn, but joy cometh in the morning. Because it's dark at night, but joy cometh in the morning. And I just do it first thing in the morning because I'm showing up for myself. I'm showing up for that day. And it may not look like people think it should look, may not sound like people think it should sound, but I'm showing up. And I can tell you there's been days on that calendar that I'm like, I can see that I'm going through, like, I think Christmas Day when I had to put the date up, like, look like it's like I'm a 105-year-old woman trying to write the date on the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I love that so much. Like, I honestly, like, I can't think of anything better than that as a way to sort of end this discussion because it's like, just show up.
Just show up.
And
because you're worth showing up for.
Yeah. And you're choosing yourself.
Yeah. And the thing is, and like because no one is going to do the work for you. Nobody's going to show up for you.
No one's coming to save you.
Nobody's coming to save you. No. And because I lost a spouse who was that person, he was the hero in my story. Mm-hmm. I have to be my own dang hero now.
Mm-hmm. And you totally can, and you are, and you have been, and you continue to be your own hero. And so that is exactly why I wanted to have you on here, so that other people could see your light and your energy. And, you know, and you're smiling and you're crying at the same time. I mean, that like literally that is the grief journey.
It is definitely the grief journey.
When you're doing it right. When you're doing it right. I think, yeah, exactly.
I just love you. And I'm so glad that night it really led me down the YouTube rabbit hole. And, you know, because the alternative was not going to end. It's not going to end this well. So I'm just, it's been an amazing journey. And I've learned a lot about myself in these last 235 days as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. When you tap into a strength that you didn't know was there, it's amazing.
Well, yeah. And that's why I say, you know, there's 4 components to the course, right? Yeah. And the 4 components are 1, learning about your grief and how grief shows up for you and how you're going to deal with it. But 2, exploring who you are, right? Definitely. And you've definitely done that on your journey. Then it's taking back control, right? What are the things that you can control in your life? Because there's a lot that you can't.
That's true. Yeah.
Right. And once you grab a hold of that and you find that inner power, well, then you can get back to living.
That's right.
You see, this is my life and this is how I want to show up in my life. And then you're giving yourself permission. And I love that phrase, giving yourself permission to live again.
Yes.
And to fully live. And that's what you deserve. That is absolutely what you deserve.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And I think everyone is going to love this video. So if you've watched this all the way to the end and you love this video, please comment. If you want to talk to Kecia directly, she is in the Grief Inspired Facebook group. So if you join in there, you will find her in there. So that's a good place to connect and get some more information out of her as well. So thank you, Kecia, so much for being here tonight.
Thank you, sweetie. Thank you so much.